Hey everyone, John Newman here. Thank you for downloading this episode of Card Mensches. Myself and Danny Black of Hobby News Daily would like to remind you this is a live show every other Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern. It can be found on most of our social medias. Danny's at sportsbalt and Hobby News Daily. I am Sports Card Nation Podcast. And it can be found on our YouTube channels. At Hobby News Daily, Sports Card Nation Podcast, at Sportsbalt, and at Card Mensches. So with that being said, we hope to see you very soon on a Friday night in our very active chat room. Now let's start the show.
Experience, quality, consistency, and the quickest turnaround times in the grading industry? We are proud to partner with SGC Grading. Check them out at www.gosgc.com.
Hi, I'm Danny Black.
And I'm John Newman.
Welcome to Card Mensches.
All right, I'm still John Newman. That's still Danny Black. And we have a third mensch this week. He's been on here before. He's probably more deserving of the mensch title than the two who started the show. So it probably should be his show. But we're always glad to share a screen with him. Dr. James Beckett. Welcome, Doctor.
Great to be here, fellow Mensches.
What a Friday night.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, what a Friday night you get to spend it with us. You must have lost a bet somewhere.
I had my Friday night date with my wife last night.
Okay.
There you go.
Better to be early than late.
Well, I'm gonna give a quick shout out to my wife who's celebrating a birthday today. I will not give out the number, but it's a significant birthday. So happy birthday to my wife.
There you go. Happy birthday, Laura.
Yep.
Well, thank you for letting Danny slip away and do this episode. This is episode 35 of Card Mensches. We're in our third year of we started, I guess, in 2022, late 2022. So we've lasted this long. I don't know if it's stubbornness or a few people like the show, but here we are. This episode, Dr. Jim, as we didn't surprise Dr. Jim. This we're calling our hobby Mount Rushmore. Those that maybe don't know, Mount Rushmore has presidential faces on it. It's carved in North Dakota, I believe, and or South Dakota. And we wanted to do a hobby version. Who would be the four guys or people that we would put on our hobby Mount Rushmore? And I said, who better to have on a show like that than someone like Dr. Jim, who probably knows some of these folks we might be talking about tonight, and also to see who you pick, Dr. Jim, right? I mean, while we might have similar picks in certain circumstances, you've had your finger on the pulse of the hobby for a long, long time. You've attended, as people know, every national, so you might have crossed paths or even known some of these folks personally, maybe not all of them, but definitely when we thought of this episode, we said we have to get Dr. Jim on this episode. It's just that kind of episode. So here you are. You graciously accepted our offer, and you asked to go last, so we will honor the guest's request. We'll kind of go. We'll let Danny. We'll go typewriter order here. I don't know the Dakotas. The furthest west I've been is where Dr. Jim is, which is Dallas. Unless I don't know which is more west, Chicago or Dallas, but that's as further west as I've ever gotten, at least stateside. I've been to Belize. I don't know if that's more west or not, but so yeah.
No one believes you.
Yeah.
It's Friday night, Dr. Jim.
This could go off the rails, Dr. Jim. This might be the last time you agree to something like this, but we're glad to have you nonetheless. Well, I don't know my Dakotas. We've established that. I am correct in this. There are four faces depicted on Mount Rushmore. So we're each going to pick four people. We'll kind of take turns. Again, many of us may have similar picks, and then we can elaborate on that. I also had 3 honorable mentions that didn't crack my top 4 that I'll throw out there at the end, and same goes for you guys too. If someone was sort of close but just didn't sneak in onto the rock facade. So we'll let Danny go first. We'll go typewriter order here, and Dr. Jim will do the first round last, and whatever order you want to do it in. So go ahead, Danny. You can kick this off.
All right. Well, maybe it's just the fact that I love history. I'm going to put them in order for me. So I'm going to start with the oldest. And based upon your introduction, Dr. Beckett must have grown up with this guy, Jefferson Burdick. Just kidding. There's the picture. Jefferson Burdick, who created essentially what I call the card catalog of cards. His collection ended up in the New York Metropolitan Museum of Art. And he literally glued cards to pages, sports cards, non-sports cards, and created every name, abbreviation, really started the documentation of the hobby. And, the first person to really put it down on paper and make it universally accessible to everybody. He was a big believer in making everything accessible. That's why he left his collection to the museum. And it wasn't about grading, and it wasn't about flipping, and it wasn't about eBay. He was literally discovering these cards himself and creating the T's and the W's and all the sets. And I just think that you have to start there when you look at the Mount Rushmore of the hobby.
Yeah, he's on my list. He's on my list as well. And for everything you just said, right? Sometimes I don't think he gets enough credit, and I'll acquiesce here to Dr. Jim. I have a feeling he's on Dr. Jim's list, but I don't think Jefferson Burdick gets enough credit for his contributions to the hobby. Like you said, some of these early sets had no names. There was no identification pertaining to him, and he kind of classified. He was the Dewey Decimal System of collectible cards when there wasn't one, and it's still used today, right? I mean, nothing got changed. He cataloged them, and we still use his designations to this day. And I'm not saying like had he not done it, someone else wouldn't have done it eventually, but he did it, and we got to give credit where credit is
the one we use. If somebody else did it, it would be totally different. This is our vernacular. This is the language.
This guy, I don't think we talk about him enough in the hobby. I know Sabre, which is very cool, has done their yearly award, is the Jefferson Burdick Award. We have combined, the 3 of us have won one of these. Unfortunately, it's not me or Danny. So you figure out who actually has won a Jefferson Burdick Achievement Award. It's Dr. Jim. Congrats to Dr. Jim. Mr. Dick Perez, Mr. Diamond King, is this year's recipient of.
And as far as I know, only one of us has cleaned his grave.
That's true. He's only about an hour. His resting place is about an hour north of, actually less than an hour. It's about 30 minutes. I'm thinking of Cooperstown for some odd reason. It's about 30 minutes, not even, north of here. And I actually in the area, periodically. And, I went up there. I'll make the story short. It's already been kind of covered. But I was surprised at what shape his grave was in. And I'm like, that I can't leave it like that. So, and the rest is history. But it's my way of saying thank you, I guess, in a small way compared to his contributions to the hobby. So I'm fortunate enough I live close enough to be able to do that. And I'll periodically check in and make sure it's being maintained. So a guy we don't talk about enough, very important to the hobby we know today. And, his collection is at the New York Metropolitan Museum of Art. And when you're doing a Mount Rushmore, to me, he was really one of the first ones that came to mind. I'm going to shut up now and let Dr. Jim allude to his musings on Jefferson Burdick.
2 things. One, I think that he's the only one that I don't know personally. I think everybody else we're going to talk about I knew, or know or knew. And in this case, you don't have to be dead, I don't think, to get on this dead presidents. But maybe we're not thinking of it that way. You don't have to be dead. But I think Jefferson Burdick, I wish I'd known him. I think we'd be kindred spirits in a sense. Every time I'm on one of these shows, if Mookie has a comment, there's always one really great nugget in his comment. And so I'm just picking up, if anybody's watching, about Jefferson Burdick being the Charles Darwin.
Yeah.
Basically, that's a really interesting thing because, first of all, Darwin did the origin of the species. He also did survival of the fittest. And he believed in natural evolution over time. All of those are aspects of our hobby that have endured for for 100 years. And one other point about Jefferson Burdick is that T206 is not a set. It is many sets that he combined into one of white border of the American tobacco brands. Otherwise, there could be 17 sets. And so he made, it wasn't just robotically, well, here, these are cards from Rodeo Meats, so we're going to call that Rodeo Meats. No, there was a lot of selectivity, editorial judgment that he used. And thankfully, he was a wise person that made these sets chaseable. So he's my number one.
Yeah, no doubt. I want to just quick shout out. Graduated from Syracuse University, where I'm not too far away from myself. And he worked at what was called Kraus Heinz, which, if you look out my window, it's about 5 blocks to the south of me on the same street. So while he passed away, obviously before I was born and before I even came to Syracuse, as I'm originally from New York City, there is that connection locally with him here, being a Syracuse University graduate, working up the road, and being his resting place being about 25 minutes away. And I think even locally, Dr. Jim, I've said this on my show, having him kind of with his roots being here, he's born in Central Square, New York, went to Syracuse. I don't think we talk about him. I don't think the media here even talks about him enough, being that he's from the area. And it's kind of sad. So anytime I can, and one of the things that came from what I did that I'm most proud of is not the actual cleaning, but the people that, said, hey, I didn't know much about this guy. I saw your post and I researched him. I Googled him and I learned about him. And that's what makes me smile. So there you go.
I'm going to keep the trains on the track. John, you're on number 2 now, right? We're going around.
Yeah, we all picked him. So I'll go second. This guy, to me, Tops wouldn't be Tops. I know the Shorin family. I'm a kid from Brooklyn. This guy put Tops where we know it today. And that's Sideburger, right? He's a legend in the hobby. He worked, I think, until he was almost into his 90s as Tops. You can see him here later in life. He's still got a Tops shirt on. And, he was just a hustler. This guy got to know the players on a personal level, created relationships with them. And, the hobby, I don't even want to say Tops, but I think the hobby wouldn't be where it is today without this man, Sideburger. And so I know John Keating wants me to keep talking, but I think I'm going to put the mic down right here. John, you might have something in your mail if you're looking for a giveaway. Smell it first, though.
Oh.
All right. There you go.
That's a Friday night for Newman. Dr. Beckett, your thoughts on Sideburger?
He's my number 2. I did know him. He's a wonderful guy. And frankly, this is great because he really was a mensch. Most people thought he was a real mensch in the fullest sense, and really was a great promoter of the hobby and of baseball and of Tops, and just a wonderful guy. And it's sad that he's gone, but he made many contributions, not just 52 Tops. He was an enduring influence in that company and kind of the soul of that company for so many years. So yeah, he's It's not that he's less than. It's just that's a little bit kind of priority or maybe chronological order. So he's not number 2 in any sense other than he's the second one, and well deserved for sure.
What was his ability to get player contracts early, and also the design of the cards? I mean, that is the hobby, the modern hobby.
I think Woody Gelman was more on the design of the cards. Now, Cy may have had some inputs there. The bold move of going to the larger card was a big deal. And, in 51, they were doing these, kind of tall and skinny kind of Connie Mack All-Stars and the teams and all that stuff. So that maybe those were tests. But the 52 top size, I think, really took the market away from Bowman.
That is not Cy Berger.
No, it's not Cy Collington.
Unfortunately, it's not Cy Berger. Danny, anything he made your list too, I'm assuming?
Yeah, he was my number 2. I think he's synonymous with Topps. I think Topps is the biggest name in the hobby history for card production if we were to rank them. And, Topps is not, to me, it doesn't exist or doesn't have anywhere near the cachet without Cy Berger. So, and this is funny. Brian Gray was calling Dr. Beckett. We wanted to know why he wasn't number 2.
It might be. Let's see if he makes honorable mention.
Just wait.
Anyway, so I just because of his association with Topps and the length of time in the hobby and everything he did to I think to create the modern card and hobby. We call it vintage, but post-war, the Topps brand easily number 2, going in chronological order for me.
To Dr. Jim, I know you knew him. You went to every national. Was he someone that made a point to be at the national himself too, Dr. Jim? Was he was that commonplace for him or not so much?
In the early years, Topps really didn't have a presence at the national. It's only been in the more modern nationals last 10 or 20 years where there's been a strong corporate presence. But the Topps in the 80s and 90s, I don't think they felt like they needed to be there. So where I saw Cy Berger was at baseball, like winter meetings. I saw him at the winter meetings. That's where he could hold court. And because it was this combination of the players and the cards, and he just really was, like I said, that was his element. He loved that whole thing. But the national, he maybe came a few times, but that wasn't his main thing, I don't think.
Ruben has a comment in here. Dr. Beckett, was that phone call PSA offering to buy you from the show?
Trying to acquire a mensch?
Yes, it's a mensch. It's a mensch move.
So they're on an acquisition spree.
Yes, exactly.
Well, we'll see. But wait till I get all my names out, and then we'll see if they want to call me or not, because I've got some controversial ones.
Oh, okay.
I'm going
to hurry up and get to Dr. Beckett. We're on number 3.
Yeah, you're up. So whoever you want to throw out.
No, I want to go last every time. I have 20 names, guys. I have 20.
Okay.
And 3 is probably where I will diverge from you guys. So you guys go, and then I'll give you my 3rd, which I don't think you will have picked.
Well, I'll go with number 3 because to me, my 3 and my 2 kind of went hand in hand. I went Warren Bowman. I know there's some controversy in the beginning of the company. There was lawsuits, lots of stuff, but he pushed Topps. Without a doubt, Bowman, I think, made Topps a better brand and forced some creativity. Some of my favorite all-time cards are Bowman cards. I know that's true for John and Dr. Beckett. I'm sure you have your favorites. To me, the classic shot of even him blowing the bubble gum. I just think that he was the next big name that put it on there. So for my number 3, I had Jacob Warren Bowman.
Yeah, he didn't make my top 4. He was on the cusp. He was on the bubble. So he's one of my honorable mentions. Bowman, as we all know, pushed Topps to the levels that they needed to be to survive, where Bowman unfortunately didn't. But it was that Bowman push that created the tops that we knew from the 50s and present day. So we got to give some sort of credit where credit's due. And so Bowman made an honorable mention for me. I don't know, if Dr. Jim wants to touch. I don't know if he's on his list or if he wants to talk about Jacob Warren Bowman at all.
Well, he's not on my list. I did not know him. He's kind of on my semifinalist list. I have, some obvious selections, then I have some finalists, and then he's not in my top 20, which really hurts to say that, because after you've said what you've said, which is correct, I think he's certainly deserving of honor, but he doesn't, in no way does he make my top 4. Just because what happens, the victors, history is written by the winners.
Fair point.
History's written by the winners. So tops won, and if you're going to have Cy Berger on there, then tops won. So, one more thing is when we get through with this, I also have I have 2 thoughts that are kind of that I didn't tell you guys about. One is, what would the Mount Rushmore be for if it was done in 1975?
Well, then I'll keep Warren Bowman on my list.
So he could come into that. And then the other is, what would the Mount Rushmore be in 2050?
Huh.
In other words, in another 26 years. And
I won't be here for that list, Dr. Jim. You and Danny do a little like in memoriam segment for me when you do that show.
Well, then if you're not there, then you could qualify for being on Mount Rushmore.
Well, that's what I'm holding out hope for right there.
Right. That'll do it all.
Anyway, I have some aspirational ones for 2050.
All right. Yeah, that's fine. Well, whose turn is it?
I think it's on to you, John, for number 4.
Well, no, number 3.
Number 3. I'm sorry.
3?
Yeah, this will be my third. This will be my third. This one was, I had to really think about this one, and there was points where I honestly can I put this person on? And then I really said, you almost have to, right? We all love the National. Dr. Jim's been to every one, as I always keep saying. I was kind of a late entrant to going to it, and I love it now. I'm going to get to everyone I'm able to go to from now on. And it's just a great event. I call it the Super Bowl of Hobby. We circle the calendar the week of that every year and look forward to it. It's become more than just a card show. It's an event. It's events after the show. And this guy is really the one who we sort of owe tribute to this show existing. And it would be, if the National wasn't the event we know it as, we could not put this person on the list. But because the National is what we know it as, it would almost be criminal not to have him on the list. So my third one is this gentleman here, Mike Burkus. The main stage is named after him. He passed away, unfortunately, early at 69. But if you enjoy the National and you love that week as I do, and thousands of others collectors do, this is really who you owe homage to the event. And I know you knew him, Dr. Jim, so I'm definitely going to acquiesce to your personal relationship with him, and as someone who's been to every National, as I constantly say, I have a feeling you just have nice things to say.
He was a close friend. We got along great. He was we had different personalities, but we were tracking together in so many steps along the way from the very first National. And I'd made trades with him back in the 70s. He was a great collector and just a wonderful guy. So I'm sad that he's not there. I do need to note that he was one of the co-founders of the National. In fact, early on, first chair was Gavin Riley, who was just a fabulous collector and a great guy. And then Steve Bruner was kind of the quieter one. And then Mike was the one that was the mouthpiece for it. And Mike endured. Gavin later kind of dropped out, and Steve dropped out, and Mike carried it on. And as you said, John, just took it to great heights based on his personal drive to make this hobby be as I say, the greatest hobby in the world. So he's very worthy. I have him in my top 10, but he's not chiseled on my Mount Rushmore.
That surprised. I'm not gonna lie. That surprises me a little bit.
A little bit.
I almost didn't pick him because I thought you were gonna pick him for sure. But I mean, I had to in my 4. But again, you have a different perspective. You've got to know many of these people that are probably on your list where I didn't. So that's probably a factor as well too.
Well, there's so many deserving people, but like I said, Gavin Riley was the initial prime mover for the National, and then but so he was the main communication in 1979 and 1980. But over time, Mike Burkus just had a way with words and really took it to the next level. So it was a group effort, and yet he emerged as somebody who really, by force of will, made it into the as Bobby Baseball says, the kind of the Super Bowl of the hobby.
Absolutely. But he's not on your 4.
Okay, my 3rd, which will be very controversial, is Hannes Wagner. I don't think we'd have the hobby we would have today without Hannes Wagner. He's not thought to be as outstanding of a player. Talk about somebody that gets no respect like Jefferson Burdick. He was probably the best player of his time. He was fast and strong and 5 tools and all that. And Pittsburgh was a major place in those days. If you go back more than 100 years, he also is the subject of the very first quest, the very first bounty. There was a bounty on Hannes Wagner, T206, from back in the late 60s, early 70s. And it's the first bounty ever. And it was, I remember it being $250, and then it got to $1,000, it got up to $1,500, and people thought, who's the crazy idiot that was putting up a bounty? And it was a guy who was not crazy, but was out in front of a lot of issues, and that was Charlie Brooks in Detroit. They're asking where the Hall of Fame could be. In those days, in the 60s and 70s, Detroit was a legitimate epicenter. I mean, there was stuff on the West Coast, there was stuff in New York, but Detroit was very strong and it was one of the first to be. So at any rate, sport hobbyist is what Charlie Brooks had. Charlie's not on there, but I'm just to be a contrary, I don't think we'd have the hobby we have now without Hannes Wagner. And his objection, perhaps, to being exploited by American Tobacco.
Definitely thinking outside the box. I mean, that's what I love about you, Dr. Jim, and the comments in the chat room echo that too, right? But it's a great point. That card, that player, we talk about it, it's over 100 years ago, and we still talk about that card. You think it came out yesterday, the way it's still in conversations and how it created, like you said, the hobby we have. So it didn't make my list. I won't argue it because everything you said is correct, Dr. Jim. That's the beauty with these lists is it's all subjective, but I can't make any counter arguments to that, and I love it.
If there'd been if the Mount Rushmore were to be established in 1975, he would be on there in that sense, because a lot of the people we're going to talk about had their heyday after that time. But I'm telling you, when I was getting very involved in the hobby in the early 70s, that was the card, and it's amazing. It still is the card. It's the only card. I mean, to think about it. I mean, Mickey Mantle and Michael Jordan and Tom Brady and all that, but Hannes Wagner back in the mid 70s at some of the big shows where all the big collectors were there, they could literally name every Wagner who had one. And it was about 50 that were known at that time, and they knew who had them. That's how strong the mystique was for that card. And it wasn't, Eddie Plank or Sherry McGee or one of these other T206 rarities, Ray Demmett. It's Hannes Wagner, who at that time was the best player in baseball.
Can you point to yours behind you?
That's an unmensch-like comment. Mensches say stuff like that to each other.
I got a different question, Dr. Beckett. You mentioned one of the greatest players ever. Is there a little bit of Pittsburgh favoritism in there?
Yeah.
Zero. Okay. Okay. I just wanted to clarify. I wanted to make sure that the audience.
And just to be clear, I never met Hannes Wagner.
Yeah. How was it watching him play? A couple of people are making the comment. People have passed down their mantle up to their children, remain strong. There's some truth there, talking about, I think, New York and Mantle. I'd say both Wagner and Mantle, but of course, Hannes came first, or Hannes, the first chase card, I guess, without a doubt. And Hammer and Hank says, Dr. B smoked very funny on the tobacco card. We are a punny group with Wagner. That is hysterical. Okay, so where are we on the list? Are we on number 4?
Number 4.
Okay, well, I know John and I have the same one here. John, you muted yourself.
I don't have a slide, Danny, for this next one on my list, because we got the best thing. We have a moving slide motion, and I always introduce him as the man that needs no introduction. And I whether he, Dr. Jim's on this episode or not, my pick would not be any different. It just happens we're fortunate and blessed to have him on the show with us. We work with him on Hobby Hotline. I'm glad to call him a friend. I've called him a hobby icon when I've introduced him. So he's on my Mount Rushmore, and that's Dr. James Beckett. So we don't have a still photo, but we don't need a still photo. Again, when we talk about people, who, how are we here, right? How did we get here? This gentleman is on that list, and he might not agree with me. I don't know, but he makes my list. I know he made yours, Danny. And again, this has nothing to do with knowing him personally or him being on this show. This is just how it's got to be for me. And when we talk about comps and things like that now, he we talk about cataloging. He had almanacs, but even before the Beckett price guides that are so famous to this day. And so when I came up with my 4, Dr. Jim was on that list.
Dr. Beckett, a little bit awkward to talk about you when you're here. So I'm glad you're alive and with us to hear it, though. Out of all the people on the list, I got to tell you, I'm the youngest one on the screen right now, and growing up, it was your magazines. I was a dealer starting, in my teens, and it was the up arrow and the down arrow. Created a lot of happiness or sorrow at a lot of mall and VFW card shows for a teenage Danny. And every magazine, every time they would come out, I really grew up on it. So to exclude you from the list of what the hobby has done for me and the people that have impacted the hobby on me, I couldn't exclude you, Dr. Beckett. Proud to know you, glad to have you on here, and thank you for what you've done for the hobby.
And I want to add something too. I'm trying to make Dr. Jim cry. I don't know if I'm going to be successful tonight, but listen, when you sold Beckett, you could have rode off into the sunset, and you didn't, because you love and you have a passion for, as you say, the greatest hobby in the world. You're still making contributions with your podcast, being at the national every year, interacting with people. Before I knew you, I've said this to you directly. I'll say it where everyone else can hear it. Before I met you for the first time or got to know you, what I thought you'd be like and how down to earth you are was completely two different things. You're a humble man, a person of faith, and an inspiration for me to try to be a better hobbyist, a better person. And like I said, you don't have to be active. You've made your contributions, and yet you're still doing it here in 2024. And that says a lot about the man and the person you are. And so this was very easy for me to put you on this list. And it has nothing to do with knowing you or being here. It just has to be that way.
We were also paid off by the Singles Club.
I like that. That's funny, but not true. But it's funny.
So, Dr. Beckett, you're our number 4.
So what is a mensch supposed to say to all that? Just, I guess, just say thank you. I appreciate that, those kind words. And, but I'm not ready for Mount Rushmore or even for consideration, because I think I've still got more to go. So we'll see.
Well, I don't think you're falling off it, but appreciate
Sure.
That,
Yeah, you got time left. You can pull whatever you want. All right, who's your number 4, Dr. Beckett?
You guys are going to kill me for this. And then don't take.
I never even heard of them laughing.
There's good people after you tell me all this humility and everything. I actually stopped at 3, and then I have finalists.
Okay.
Because after, I really had 2 that were just slam dunks. Like I said, Mike Burkus was in my top 10, but not. And Hannes Wagner, you talk about a player and a card that has gotten a lot of recognition, but could even get more. That was the quest. So I just stopped at 3, and then I made this big long list of people that are some of whom are extremely deserving, and but it's hard to just. It kind of depends on how you appreciate some of the things they did, but they were amazing. And then I have some aspirational ones for a kind of a 2050 approach to. Hey,
do you want me to
is standing here, Mookie? You better be careful there. Wow.
So how about we do this? I have 3 honorable mentions. I'll mention them kind of quickly, and then we can go over that extended Dr. Jim list if he doesn't mind doing.
And I've got a couple honorable mentions if we can squeeze them in.
Yeah.
All right, John, thank you.
I'll do that in that order, and then I'll give you all mine, because there's some really worthy people that.
Yeah, that's the thing. When you do lists, right? That's the bad thing about lists is, your chances are you might leave someone off, or someone's feelings can get hurt. So, my controversial honorable mention is Mr. Mint, Alan Rosen. I know a lot of people aren't fond of him or his bedside manner, but he was critical to the hobby we know today. This is the guy that some of the things he did when he did are still. We see more, it's more commonplace now, and I think a lot of that is to him. So Mr. Mint was one of my 3. Jacob Warren Bowman, as I mentioned before, didn't make my top 4, but he was an honorable mention. And we talked about him already. He's this year's winner of the Jefferson Burdick Award from Sabre, and that's Dick Perez. For me, and I wrote an article about this, growing up in Brooklyn, I was a Topps kid. I could care less originally when Donruss first came out. But it was his Diamond Kings that made me turn my head and say, what is this? And there's something else besides Topps that's sort of interesting. And I've had the privilege to get to tell him that and interview him and have him on and meet him in person. So for me, he makes my honorable mention list just to the fact that he turned me on to something other named not Topps when it comes to sports cards and baseball cards. So those are my 3 honorable mentions, Danny. I don't know. Go ahead with. I don't know if you have any similar ones or in addition to. But go ahead.
Well, I wanted to touch on, and Dr. Beckett expanded a little bit, but John, your Mike Burkus choice I had as a honorable mention, but I had the entire crew that started the National because I know it. Without that group, it might not have ever gotten off the ground for Mike Burkus to put the accelerant on it over the years. But to me, the National would also answer the question of where's the geographic center of the hobby. Wherever the National is, that's the geographic center of the hobby. And the power of the National has just become so strong for people who love to collect, even if you don't go. I mean, the prices on cards across the hobby rise around the National. Downloads on podcasts go up around the National. People just are much more into the hobby, and that's all from the buzz surrounding our Super Bowl. So for me, yeah.
So you're saying Atlantic City?
Yeah. You backed me into a corner on that one. No, how about inside the building? not Atlantic City, but inside the building.
Listen, I'll take Atlantic City. I can drive there. My wife likes it. She goes to the beach. So, and when she travels, I've talked about this on my show. When she goes, my bill gets cut in half because it comes out of that joint account. So Atlantic City every year. I know people are cringing hearing me say that, but
if you want a Hall of Fame that's going to be or a Mount Rushmore that's going to be not visited after dark.
Yeah, really. And really probably not even afternoon.
We diverge.
So that was the big one that I had on my I just thought that Mike Burkus and that group deserved mention. Dick Perez, I respect completely what everybody's saying. I think it's one of the first insert sets that has resonated still to this time. Not every insert set has still resonated, and Diamond Kings are one of the few that are avidly collected by so many people to this day. But didn't make my list, but honorable mention as well. And then the only other thing I'd like to throw in there is whoever created hobby social media. I don't know if it was one person, but social media has changed the hobby. And I couldn't figure out how to put a person on there, but it is certainly a part of the hobby differently than when I grew up. And it's a real part of what we do now.
So you're saying Mark Zuckerberg, Elon?
I wasn't going to name any specific names, Dr. Beckett.
Al Gore invented the internet, I believe. So
I wasn't going to get into that any more than I was going to ask Dr. Beckett to show cards from the wall. All right, so those were my honorable mentions. So I think Dr. Beckett.
Now? Okay, I've got a list. I'll go through them. I'll try to do it pretty quick. I mean, I believe in a small Hall of Fame, and so maybe I believe in a small Mount Rushmore or something. But if it were more than 4, it wouldn't be a big deal to me because it really gets tricky because there's so many deserving people. And like I said, I think it depends on the time reference. If you in 1975, it would have been different than 2000 and 2024. And I've even looked at where I think it could be in 2050. And I'm hoping a couple of guys especially do great things to where but with Mount Rushmore, it's permanent. You can't chisel out George Washington and put somebody else in there. I guess you can make a new one. I had Rob Veras on my, and one of the things that I really admire about him, aside from having the kind of the preeminent card shop, is he's been able to pretty successfully have a generational transfer from his dad being involved somewhat, but mainly him, and then bringing Ryan, his son, in. So a lot of admiration for what he's done. It's not luck, it's hard work and a lot of vision. And it's the place where people need to go if they're only going to go to one card shop. And that's, again, in 75, he wouldn't have been on it. By 2000, by now, he is a go-to guy. So, okay, that's one. The other one, and this hasn't come up, but if I put in Hannes Wagner, I can't really put in Mickey Mantle. But Mickey Mantle would be the other player. Very iconic. Again, if you wanted to draw people, have people come to the Mount Rushmore, putting Mickey on there would get all the baby boomers to come and all the people of a certain age. So Mickey Mantle, again, it's the card of the modern of the not ultra modern, but of the modern age. Let's see. Frank Nagy, I think, would have been on it if it would be in 1975. He was kind of the preeminent collector out of Detroit. He was the guy that, when I was getting ready to do price guides, he had so much wisdom about which he had all the cards pretty much. He had probably the best collection in the world. And, but he knew what was tough and what wasn't. That was really and very helpful to me. He was like a auto worker, but he was just really an amazing guy. So I did a podcast about him, but I don't think he makes it now just because he's been gone for a long time. But he was I think he was kind of a mensch, in a certain way. Jeff Rosenberg is not going to make it, but he's one of my finalists just because he's had an enduring. He's given his heart and soul to the hobby. He's produced cards. He's handled the autograph stuff. He's done shows, and through it all, he's done it with class. And again, a lot of respect for him. I don't think he makes it to the mountain, but he's very honorable mention. I have Brian Gray as a finalist, and I've been talking to him lately. I got him on my podcast, and basically his goal. I mean, he's driven, and even though he's sold Leaf, his goal is to continue to make an impact in this hobby. And so, if there's a 2050, I'm hoping he makes it, because if he makes it, that means he's taken his creativity in a different direction and done some amazing things. So I'm hoping he makes it. Right now, he doesn't make it, but he's honorable mention at this point. Jeff Wilson, another controversial one. Not for now. He doesn't make it now for sure. But in 2050, if his card shop has really taken off like he hopes it will, and he's doing pricing and media and all this stuff, he's super entrepreneurial. And if he continues at the same rate he's gone in the last 5 years, he could be on the Mount Rushmore if it's done in 2040 or 2050. Kit Young, probably if it had been done in 2000, he'd be on there. The Kit Young Summit in Hawaii, he didn't found it, but he kind of shaped it from early on, and that was instrumental in bringing the hobby and bringing the manufacturers and the dealers and the collectors together all in one room. It didn't happen before that. It happened there before it happened at the National, and it was because of Kit's persuasive abilities to really. Well, who doesn't want to go to Hawaii in February? But still, he got the right people in the room or in the area, and that was fabulous. And again, he did it because he cared. He's plenty wealthy, but he believes in the hobby, and he really helped take it to the next level. Another controversial one, Barry Halper. Again, if you did it back in the 90s or something like that, part owner of the Yankees, he's passed away now. At one point, probably the best collection as well. And much of that went into auction. And I knew him, and he probably would want to be, he probably was a mensch in a sense as well. So, for some people, if they ever went to his house, they would say, yeah, Mount Rushmore is in his house with his dry cleaning rack of uniforms from every Hall of Famer. Another controversial one, Ken Golden. This is more apt. I don't have him on now, but if he keeps going, he's either going to burn out, he's going to flame out, or he's going to take over the world, because he is extremely driven, and he's successfully bridged the gap into a TV show, Golden Touch, and auctions, and there's more that he wants to. He's been a card manufacturer. And so in 2050, if there's a reevaluation, and if he's been going at the same speed that he's been going the last couple of decades, because he's done a lot and he's not that old. He's quite a bit younger than me. So he's got more to go, and we'll see. Richard McWilliam is a finalist. Again, if he'd live longer, I mean, just for the thought of having the vision the vision was not just to create Upper Deck and be the business mind behind it. It was also the business mind to take out your partners. And he didn't kill them, but he acquired the company at a strategic point. He believed in it more than anybody else, and that was that he bet big on our hobby, and that's worthy of respect. And it's disappointing he's not around. His family's still in the ownership seat for Upper Deck, but Upper Deck took this industry to another level. Michael Rubin. If Michael Rubin is not on the Mount Rushmore of 2050, then that's a problem. Because if somebody can 10x this hobby, they deserve to be, I don't know, they could have their own Mount Rushmore. If he really 10x's the hobby, and I hope he does without messing it up, but I'm hoping that in 2050 we are deifying Michael Rubin as a visionary who put his money where his mouth was, put other people's money where his mouth was, figured out a way to get this done. And I hope he does it. And I hope he does it. Next I have Mike Ehrenstein. Again, he's been a card manufacturer. He's been a show promoter. He's He's done so many different things. And again,
somebody in the comments mentioned him earlier.
Yeah, if it would have been earlier in the 70s, or the early 80s, absolutely. I mean, now he's, like you say, John, if you're the older guys are usually forgotten. Another controversial one, but certainly worthy. But this would have been only a Mount Rushmore for the period of 1988 to 1993, and that is Lud Denny. And again, because of his size, he would need to take up 2 spots. Okay, now he's passed away, but he was large and in charge, and he 100x'd the football card and maybe 10x'd hockey, but he 100x'd football. He put football on the map just by his promotion and going to New York and talking these, the players in the leagues into giving him a shot. And that's, again, I don't think he makes the mountain, but he's certainly worthy to remember. Mike Kramer is one of my, again, you got a guy that had millions of cards before he started a card company. He started a card company. And the other thing I like about Mike, besides being a good friend, is that he exited honorably. He didn't, I think he got a bad deal. He didn't make a big deal about it. He just quietly sold the brand, and he wasn't bankrupt or anything. He had plenty of money. He walked away. And so he's had some health challenges, which I think he's turned the corner on. So I'm very, very pleased about that. So he's worthy of it. I don't know that he makes it, but he's worthy. Larry Fritsch, his name's already come up, but Larry Fritsch would really be. There was one period there when all you found were the only access you had to cards was Sporting News, and Larry Fritsch was the man. And then I've been up to his. He has, like, when I talk about the 7 wonders of the collecting world, that was one of them. Going to his barn, unbelievable. Just millions of cards sitting out there in an unair conditioned barn was amazing. Only got 2 more. Mr. Mint, obviously, he'd be my top 10. But again, there was a period there where he was the face of the hobby. So maybe we don't want to put him on Mount Rushmore, but he would want to be on Mount Rushmore. In fact, he would insist. In fact, he would not be willing to be on Mount Rushmore unless he was in the first thing that you saw.
And if you didn't put him on, he'd just make his own Mount Rushmore.
No, he would not. He would not come to a card show unless he got table number 1.
Yep.
And that was his statement. Dick Perez, again, very worthy, but I have his vote split with Frank Steele, who was I was a lot closer with Frank, and Frank was the vision. Dick was really the skill. Wow. I mean, just amazing, prolific artist, sports artist, but artist too. And then lastly, my last one that I hope makes it for 2050, because if he does, it would have meant, even though he's a kind of a quasi-competitor of my old company, but Nat Turner. I'm very hopeful that Nat Turner would have done enough by 2050 that people are saying that guy needs to be on Mount Rushmore. In fact, Michael Rubin and Nat Turner are kind of the leaders of the 2 biggest brands or entities or conglomerates in our industry. And if they do well and really lead and not follow, but lead, then that'd be great. So I guess what I'm saying, guys, it's premature. Number 1, you can't put me on there because I'm alive. And some of these, and I think things are going to keep happening.
Marshall Fogel, the question just came up. Great collection. I don't know, Dr. Beckett, what you think about Marshall?
He's very worthy. I mean, he's a great spokesman for the hobby. If this is, I'm Sports Card Insights, and there's sports collectibles and memorabilia and all that stuff. If it's memorabilia and cards, he moves up many notches. Maybe he makes the mountain, but he's equally memorabilia to cards. In fact, I think he's very selective on cards and has a fabulous memorabilia. But he'd be certainly worthy.
I don't think he'll own a card. I don't think he'll own a card under an 8. I think it's
that's correct. Nothing graded lower than 8, or he doesn't consider it. So Nice guy. Like I had him on. I got to know him.
I know. Yeah, he's a great guy, and he's a great spokesman for our industry. And he's generously loaned out these fabulous, pristine types of things that are just millions of dollars. He has one card that's worth more than most people's collections, for sure.
I got to add this in because this is one of the most amazing facts about him. He was in a tank battalion at the age of 63. I'm 51. So 12 years from now, I probably couldn't even climb up into a tank today, let alone 12 years from now. He did it at age 63 for, I think, 2 years. Well, at least a year. That's insane.
I've actually been in a tank myself when I was in the Army. And I'm just telling you, if the big guns don't get your ears, the tanks will, because it's miserable. It's miserable being in a tank. It's the opposite of shock absorbers. In fact, you are the shock absorber.
John, I would pay to watch you get into a tank.
Yeah, I would try it. I'd just have paramedics. Just have paramedics standing by.
Ruben says, John, you are a tank.
Man, that's probably the closest I'll get to being in a tank, is being one myself.
Dr. Beckett, real quick, Barry has asked a lot of great questions about your magazine and for you. I don't know if you know this. How many issues of Beckett are there?
You mean how many different titles, or how many? I'm
assuming he means how many issues of the baseball magazine have there been. I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was.
If you buy the current one, it'll tell you on there.
Yeah, usually, yeah. We were up when I sold out. We were in the 200, but 12 a year times whatever that's been 40. Wait a minute, 40 years. So we had actually did 10 or 11 some of the early years, because we did a double issue for some of the winter months. But so that's closing in on 500, 480 or 470 something. Wow. Well, and then there was different numberings. We had alternate covers, and we had.
Well, I gotta say, I love the list. You didn't care, like you said. Some are definitely controversial. We saw some comments in the chat room with some of those names mentioned. There's one gentleman you mentioned, like if he would be on his own Mount Rushmore. Mr. Mint would, if he wasn't on it, would just make his own and put himself in the first slot there, as you said. But sometimes whether you like or not like a person, right, we still have to respect what they've brought to the table, and you got to sort of put that opinion aside and give sort of credit where it's due. And I think you did that with that list. It'll be interesting. I don't know if I'll be around. Probably not, but we'll see. Where it goes. And
well, again, with Mount Rushmore, my sense is that Mount Rushmore was determined probably by Congress. I mean, I don't think there was a popular vote of who should be on there. And I don't think the sculptor or the whatever it was, said, I want to do, these are interesting profiles, I'm going to do those. I think there probably was some congressional, it's like being on a stamp. If you've passed away, you've made great contributions, and you're going to be selected for this honor. So.
And a funny, when I made my list of 4, and obviously I just made, like you said, Dr. Jim, I made a list of like 10 people and then narrowed it down to 4, to my final 4. What is it with the last name with B's, right? You got Jefferson, my 4, Jefferson Burdick, Dr. James Beckett, Cy Berger, and Mike Burkus.
And I had Warren Bowman as mine.
Yeah.
Danny Black.
Danny Black.
I'm a little insulted. I got to tell you, Dr. Beckett, you named 243 people, and I didn't make the list.
You can make if Hobby News Daily is going strong in 2050, you really have a good chance.
Well, that's a good reminder for anybody who's watching. Tomorrow night is our 1-year anniversary show of Hobby News Daily, so tune into that. All right.
That'd be 6,000 episodes, I guess. 250 a year times 24 years.
Adam Palmer all the time.
Well, he can fill them up.
All right. Well, John, do you have anybody else on your list?
No, I mean, a lot of, Mike Kramer, hearing Dr. Jim talk about Mike Kramer, and I've gotten to know him in the last couple of years on a more personal level. I've talked about the innovation Pacific brought to the hobby that was a little bit, I don't know if Dr. Jim will agree or you, Danny, was a little bit ahead of its time. And he was doing his own, he was, like he said to me, I was making stuff that I liked because if I like it as a collector, I felt like, other people would enjoy it too. That was my litmus test. And this is a guy that worked doing one of the most dangerous jobs in industry, working on a crab fishing boat in Alaska. And we, even to this day, with all the money, this was in the late 60s, 70s, before the technologies we have today. People still lose their life doing that job. And he was doing that to fund what eventually would become Pacific Trading Cards. And, he's a really modest guy. Like, he doesn't, he reminds me of Dr. Jim in a way, but I don't think he gives himself enough credit for what he's brought to the hobby. So hearing Dr. Jim mention him, I obviously nodded my head in agreement and felt a little bad that I kind of left him off even my list of 10. He probably should be in. I would put him probably ahead of, in hindsight, I would move him ahead of Mr. Mint. I just was, a brain lapse on my part when coming up with that list of 10. But very worthy. And again, for that's the thing with lists, right? They're individual opinions. That's the beauty of them. And not everyone's going to agree with everyone. I know some of the candidates you mentioned, Dr. Jim, brought out some boo birds in the chat room. But I appreciate you for like, hey, you don't have to like this person, but let's not ignore what they've done in their career, right? That's not fair to them. And I appreciate that fact. And even mentioning like some in the future, hey, if things trend along the way they're going and continue that way, we have to look at those folks as potential there. And I love that you mentioned some guys that would have made it had we done this list, 50 years ago, 40 years ago. You always give people their proper credit, and that says a lot about you as well. So, it's great. You're always going to leave someone off. I dropped the ball with Mike Kramer, not intentionally, but hearing you kind of mention him reminded me, like, whoops, on my part. So, definitely, we could have made a longer list, but I was just going off the Mount Rushmore of 4 people. So that's
if everybody read Mike Kramer's book that came out last fall,
yep,
they would probably vote for him if there was such a thing. They would say, wow, I had no idea. Because I've known him pretty well from the beginning, and I learned some things that were going on behind the scenes. I had regular interactions with him, but he just, that was really cool to read the book and fill in some of the gaps. And it's all good. It's a guy that really was dedicated to a hard worker and kind of self-taught. Just a lot to admire there.
It's smart buying Topps overstocks item when no one else sort of wanted them. He kind of saw ahead. Again, he saw the writing on the wall when no one else could read it, and became who he was because of that insights and smarts. And again, Pacific, I don't think that brand and Kramer himself gets sometimes enough credit for. I know they weren't around a super long time, but they brought a lot of innovation to the hobby. And and even in his book, Dr. Jim, which is a great book, Kramer's Choice, highly recommended. Even that, he was very modest in how he did his own book. And it's a great read. I think it took me, I'm not a voracious reader. I think I had that thing done in 2 days, and was, I knew a lot about him, but like you said, there was stuff in that book I had no idea until I read it. So.
And I wanted to mark this earlier. This cracked me up. Ruben said, whoever invented penny sleeves and top loaders, that guy needs to be on Mount Rushmore. So,
well,
who was it, Dr. Beckett?
Well, it could have been Ultra Pro. I mean, I used to be, it's possible Ultra Pro was involved in some of those things. They were one of the early supplies makers. Yeah, I'm not sure about that, but that'd be my guess.
Well, for the impact on the hobby, it's hard to imagine anything being more than the penny sleeve. It's kind of a good one. All right. I just want to give a quick shout out to Stadium Insurance. Stadium Insurance, one of our sponsors. Thanks for supporting us. And if you're looking to, insure your collection, stadiuminsurance.com. All right. Stu says replaced rubber bands. Yes.
I love this comment. Mookie never fails to deliver. So he said, "Oh, you took it off the screen."
Sorry.
Dr. B's in my final four. John and Danny can face off in the play-in game for spot 60.
That is truly March Madness.
You're half right there, Dr. Beckett.
Yeah, a couple people earlier mentioned even selling platforms like eBay was a game changer. I agree. Whether I say eBay is a blessing and a curse, but again, you can't argue with their impact on the hobby. I lived it firsthand. They came about during my store days, and it changed my perspective on being in the store and what I was able to do, and kind of getting out of the store and just kind of touring and doing shows. So eBay is definitely, I was thinking more on with actual people, but when we're talking about things like that, for sure, you can't argue with the eBay. Someone mentioned that. I'm sorry, I don't remember who it was, but they did mention eBay.
No, a couple of people definitely did. And one thing that I think we've already answered, I wanted to try to answer this for Barry, was the first autograph to be included in the pack. Wasn't that the Nolan Ryan insert or the Reggie Jackson? There was a Reggie Jackson, I think.
Upper deck Reggie, I think.
Yeah, that's the upper. And again, you mentioned.
That's why I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, Richard McWilliams. I know there's some he's a controversial figure, but up until that point, right, Upper Deck became a game changer, much like Pacific did in their heyday. And so, again, we got to give credit for the contributions, right? And even though something happened later on that came to light.
Yeah, it's stood the test of time. Like Mike Kramer, he wasn't highly regarded when he was doing these things. It's only in hindsight we look back and think, wow, that guy had so many innovations and entrepreneurial energy and did a lot more right than wrong. But his brands were not respected that much when they were coming out. He was in fourth place or whatever place there was. He was, and the leagues were not happy with him. But he didn't overproduce. He was quality minded. So I think, like I said, why I'm looking at the time aspect of it is that you need some time to see the body of work. And like Dick Perez, you've seen 40 years of excellence. And so that's enough to look back and say. So it's like the Baseball Hall of Fame is that you want to have enduring excellence, not just, again, I'd put Dale Murphy and Roger Maris in probably two MVPs in a row is unbelievable. But if you only have 5 or 7 or 8 years of great playing, and you stay too long, maybe that's a message for me. I better not stay too long.
Maybe
Willie Mays stayed too long. It damaged his legacy.
Yeah, no, we got to vote for YouTube. YouTube has made the hobby a much smaller place, even though the hobby is a big thing across the world. YouTube has made it feel more intimate, and so I wouldn't argue YouTube as well. And like you said, Danny, social media, right? In general, we can kind of just put it in that sort of just one category of social media and content, which made it's made the hobby world a very intimate and smaller place. And I think that's overall, I think is a positive. There's probably some negatives in there, but I think the good outweighs the bad there.
I think a Mount Rushmore concept, though, is not good, slightly outweighing the bad, or there needs to be not very much bad.
Yeah.
So
that's the idea. This should be the small hall inside the hall.
I think so. Yeah, that's what it's like. That's why. And so I have a foyer full of worthy people that don't have to buy a ticket to get in, but they're not going to be on the mountain. But if it was a big mountain, they could be on that mountain.
Well, here's a candidacy I can get behind. Barry says, Dr. James Beckett for president 2024. Do you want to take this show to officially announce that you're running?
My platform is to 10x the hobby.
To 11x. You got to 11x.
Listen, if I would vote for you.
Spinal tap.
I don't want to make it
11.
political, but I would vote for you probably over what we probably will have to vote for. So I'm
Actually,
all for that.
I'm not that much younger than those guys. That's
yeah, but you might have more. I'll say this with certainty. I think you have your faculties a lot more than those gentlemen do. I'll say that. That's
we'll see.
I think we've lost. I
think the crowd.
This is Barry's first episode, he said, and I think we're giving him a ride for his money tonight. Real quick, Mookie, when Mount Rushmore was finished, we were on the 32nd president. That means 1 out of 8 presidents were represented on the mountain. So when we talk about small hall or big hall.
Okay.
Yeah. So
and dated. It's dated. So now you look back and think, why is that guy on there? But like I said, I still come back to Jefferson Burdick and Seiberger. For the end of time, those guys are going to be on there.
And we'll come back in 2050 and do an update show.
I'll be watching hopefully from above. I'll be with you in spirit, guys.
Hear yourself.
Then I'll do it by myself. All right. We're going to wind it up here. Unless you have anything else to add, Dr. Beckett or John?
Well, thanks, guys. Good topic and great participation from Mookie, Barry, Ruben, etc.
I always say this, Dr. Jim. I don't know if you listen to it on audio form. We have the best live chat room. Some of the comedy and comments. It's just great. So we, I'm biased, but we have the best chat room going.
All right. Dr. Beckett, thank you very much. John, say good night, John.
Good night, John.
See you guys.